Folks, welcome back to the Soccer Talk Lads podcast, the STL podcast, pending litigation in the city of St. Louis. We are going to bring to you today a interview with some RSL fans of the Royal Riot podcast. Hayden Nielsen was gracious enough to gift me some of his time today to answer my questions about Salt Lake, about what their outlook is this week, about what they've seen from their team this season so far. And I think it's an important context to gain, especially in terms of where St. Louis is right now, what they're looking for this week, potentially looking ahead to Minnesota next week, to Seattle, the ultimate litmus test a couple weeks from now, and they can't be looking past this game. As I talked about with Hayden, Salt Lake are still a competent team. They're not as bad as their record says. They've had a week off. They lost their home opener. They're going to be coming back to this game with some reinforcements, and potentially a difficult time for St. Louis if they can't put their stamp on the game like they've been able to the last 4 weeks. So appreciate y'all coming in, giving it a listen. Of course, check out the Royal Riot podcast if you want to hear some more of me from a St. Louis versus Salt Lake perspective. Hayden asked me some questions about just what to expect from us in this game. Give some things that we didn't necessarily talk about in our main podcast. A couple of updates, actually. Tim Parker still going to be listed as questionable. They talked about in the pre-match conference today that it's going to be a game time decision again. So potentially some relief there, but also potentially not. So we're going to have to be waiting on bated breath. It sounds like Xabi Blom is still unavailable as well, which I know we talked about in the podcast, but just getting some confirmation on that today. Anyway, thank you so much for giving us a listen, and let's head off to the interview. All right, everyone, welcome back to this special addendum of the Soccer Talk Lads podcast. I, of course, am Justin Horneker, Sans, Steven, and Ian today. I have a special guest with me, Hayden from the Royal Riot, who covers RSL, of course. Hayden, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm glad we could get this worked out. Because I am curious about RSL, because it's a team that, to me, always is a team that I want to count out, but seems to find its way in the playoff picture, seems to find its way kind of like in the conversation. And of course, this year it hasn't been quite that way yet, but I'm interested to hear, like, before the season started, what was kind of your outlook on this team compared to last year?
Right. So, great question, just to get kind of started. It's kind of a big question. This outlook on this season, we lost Sergio Cordova, our top scorer last year. We didn't bring back Bobby Wood, who was never able to see his full potential because, he's been dealing with injuries for years now, but we lost him. And those were the two big losses this offseason, I would say. And then we brought in our, club record signing, Carlos Andres Gomez, who, he's 20. He's really young. You don't really know what you're going to get. So I was like, okay, that's pretty exciting. We didn't really need a winger that much, but it's cool that we got him. And then we bring in just barely Brian Vera, who will be most likely, if you're a betting man, I would bet on Vera starting against St. Louis. So Brian Vera, I believe that he is the third most expensive defender to ever transfer into MLS. So we're spending money. So that's exciting. Yeah. But as far as like outlook on where the season went, I put our ceiling as like 5th place. Our floor is probably 10th, maybe 11th. Like, we're the same team we were last year, essentially. Okay. Yeah. Long way to get to that point that we're the same exact team that you saw last year.
No, that's kind of what I was hoping for in terms of like what to expect. Because obviously there were those slight changes, and I actually like bringing in Brian Vieira, because I think like center backs and defenders in this league are kind of like outsized contributors when you bring in like a proven defender. And like for someone like RSL, I think that's very helpful.
Hopefully, because the rumor that I've been hearing, and I don't think it's so much a rumor, I'm putting this as fact. So when will this be released? Today or tomorrow?
Yeah, today, whenever I
Okay.
get it ended.
Yeah. So Silva and Oviedo are going to be out for RSL this weekend. Silva, center back. He was our captain last season with Damir Krylak. Vera should be replacing him at the left center back role. So it should be a Silva and Justin Glad pairing. Oviedo at left back will be out as well. We all know he's old. We don't really know what the exact rotation. If I were to put a best guess, I would guess that Brody moves over to the left and our youngster Bodie Hidalgo starts on the right. That would be my best guess on that. In the midfield, you got Pablo Ruiz making his season debut, our best midfielder right now. And Jasper Loffelson, who has had an up and down season. He was just suspended a game. He was back last week, but if you all remember, he was suspended for spitting on a player, so that's not ideal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And then Savarino was on international duty, is not on international duty anymore. He is injured, quote unquote. He will be available for this game, but he will not be starting. So expect Justin Merrim up on the left wing. Rubin is out with international duty, so expect Anderson Julio at the 9, and then our youngster Carlos Andres Gomez on the right wing. So, and Damir Krylak underneath all those at the 10.
Yeah, and I look at it too as RSL coming off of like a week bye as a potential dangerous game for St. Louis, because I'm not sure how familiar you are, but St. Louis is kind of decimated at center back right now too, with Kyle Hebert going on international duty. Tim Parker is still questionable, so they're looking at Lucas Bartlett, who had his first start and only played 4 minutes prior last game, and then probably Josh Yarrow, who's never started at a top flight before.
And St. Louis, I mean, their defense, just as from an RSL perspective, shaky at best. They got a shutout last week, their first shutout, which is huge, against San Jose, who we don't really know what to expect from San Jose coming into this year. They made some moves, but we don't know if that's really too much. But St. Louis, I mean, if nothing else, you cannot deny that they've surpassed every expectation. But winning 5 in a row is that's going to be a pretty tall task.
Yeah, especially with the way that the games have gone, and also you're kind of looking at a Real Salt Lake team, and I think like there's got to be some desperation there in terms of getting a win.
Right. And I mean, this is said every week, and or not every week, but every time RSL loses, this stat pisses off RSL fans the most because it's always brought up, but we don't lose 2 in a row. Pablo Mastroeni has only lost twice in a row once in his entire tenure with RSL. It's brought up every time. We don't like that stat because we hear it a lot, which means we lose a lot, but he doesn't lose twice in a row. So I don't think he'll be losing this one, especially since he already lost twice in a row. So I doubt he's going to lose 3 in a row.
What would you say went wrong in the games especially against Austin, that I thought they were very much in, that a couple of bounces go their way and they win that game? Like, what do you think was exploited within RSL, especially by an Austin team that I know like we're familiar with, having played them in our home opener as well?
The midfield. It's the midfield. So in that game, if you watched, Brian Ojeda and Jasper Loffelson were bossed around essentially the whole game. They weren't able to complete very many passes. They weren't stepping into the lanes. They weren't stepping to press. If you watched that RSL Austin game, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but Austin scored on 2 worldies, basically.
Galazos, yeah.
2 goals that they don't usually score. The first one, I mean, what did you want us to do on that one? But the second one, we had all the time in the world to step up on that. I think it was Wolf who scored that. All the time in the world just to step up. Jasper got beat. Ojeda was just basically watching him warm up to take the shot and didn't do anything. So that's going to be the biggest fix. And, Pablo Ruiz hasn't played. He was a key contributor to this team. He struggled the end of last year after his father passed away in July. And we're really hoping that after some much needed time off in Argentina with his family, that he can come back and be, fully here, because he was an impactful player in the beginning part of last season. So that's got to be a key. And then we got to get some contributions from our 9. I mean, we haven't had any goals scored from our top 3 this season. Our top scorer is a center back. So got to figure that out. Yeah. It's not ideal.
Yeah. And What do you think? Like, do you think the bye week helped them kind of reset, especially with like having players come back that weren't in the squad before? Like, do you think this is kind of a new mentality that they're going to be coming into this game with?
Yes and no. I mean, I think every time that a team steps foot into Now America First field,
Hmm.
but passionately known by the fans as the Riot, you're going to have a hard time coming away with 3 points. And we just got embarrassed at home. We had a ton of opportunities. It was the home opener. The Utah Royals were announced before that game.
Hmm.
We had all of this momentum. And then we somehow, drop all three at home. So I would think that they have a lot of energy going into this game. And to answer your question about, you know, does this bye week help? Yes, but also the players, they had a little bit of a vacation. They all had a
Hmm.
couple days to go and kind of do their own thing. So I'm interested in that as much as you are, but I would assume that they should be looking fit for the guys that are actually ready to play.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It should be a fun matchup. Like, I'm interested to see from a St. Louis standpoint because Cardell in the pre-match press conference they had today, like, mentioned about how they weren't expecting to walk into Salt Lake and have an easy time. Like, they mentioned the crowd and they mentioned how hard it is to win at Real Salt Lake, and like I thought that was very telling because Cardell's very open about like the challenges that they are working on
Right.
and approaching.
Right. And this week's going to be different. I mean, you guys are used to the cold, obviously being in
Hmm.
Missouri. So that's not like
Yeah,
we don't
last game
have
was
any.
brutal.
Right. If there's any away St. Louis fans traveling to this, please dress warm. I beg of you. Please do not think that this is going to be any warmer than last week. We're expecting low 30s with
Hmm.
a pretty good chance of snow. So
Yes,
the
yeah.
orange ball possibility is very, very high. I have it from my good source that it's not going to be a sellout unless we get a big intake of tickets. We're not looking at a sellout this week, unfortunately. Weather, big part of that. But so maybe it'll be a little bit easier place for St. Louis to come and play. I hope not, but I hope the fans still show up stronger than expected because right now it's not looking great as how close we are to selling out the stadium for tickets sold.
Yeah, the cold is like a great equalizer. Like the
Oh, I
players were
know.
definitely. It was so last game. I'm not sure if you how familiar you were, but it was like 29 degrees at the start, like a wind chill of 9 degrees, and
Yeah.
like the players were like after the game. That was like all they were talking about was how hard it was to like adjust those first 10 minutes to the weather. So like it
No,
definitely makes a difference.
I've loved watching St. Louis this year. Though St. Louis, incredibly fun team to watch. I mean, maybe it's just because in every game there's a lot of goals
Hmm.
scored, so that makes it easy to have them be a fun team. And it was even more fun watching Austin and Charlotte make such bad mistakes. That was kind of funny.
Yeah,
And I just hope that we don't also get embarrassed by some cherry picking St. Louis players that I don't know how that happened 2 weeks in a row, but that was amazing.
yeah. It's they put center backs under a lot of pressure, and especially when you're talking Austin and Charlotte, who at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the year like weren't I think ready, and especially in Austin's case where their center backs depth in Charlotte too, where their center back depth is kind of
Right.
shallow. You're
Right.
asking players who maybe aren't necessarily comfortable with the ball with like intensity coming at you, and that's kind of when that happens. But yeah,
Right. No.
so I think it'll be a great game. But Hayden, you mentioned the Royals, so I want to ask you about that. Like, how excited are you to have the Royals back in Salt Lake, especially since like I follow the KC Current, I cover the KC Current, so like knowing how the Royals left, knowing that it's like nothing to do with the fans, and now knowing that you get the team back, like what's the excitement level like in Salt Lake?
It's very, very high. I mean, it was heartbreaking when
Mm.
the Royals left because, like you said, it had nothing to do with the fans. The fans had the second best attendance in the entire league last time they were here, getting well over 10,000 a game, which was great for the time. And I expect that it'll be even better once they return next March. And, I think my co-host Stockton would have been better to ask this question because he was a season ticket holder
Yeah,
last
I threw
time
a
and he's
curveball at you. I
already
know.
right. He already deposited for the season tickets this time, but I think it's amazing. I think that the sport, soccer is huge in Utah, especially with the youth. And for our women, our young girls and women to have role models looking up to in this sport, that they can go and see every week and watch on TV or be at the game, it's huge. And I'm having a baby girl in May, and I'm stoked that she's going to have someone that, she can say like, oh, I love this sport and I have my female role models. I think that's massive. And the fans are 100% going to back this club again. And we're stoked to have them back.
Yeah, it's just such a fun league to watch too, the NWSL. So I'm excited to have more teams coming in and have more of that like competitive balance as well.
Oh yeah, we already are creating our podcast for it. We're just getting all of our hosts lined up, and then once we start getting a GM coach, it's going to be fun. We're going to go kind of through I'm guessing what you went through with having a year where you're not really doing much. There's not very much going on. And then it's like, okay, it's go time when the season finally starts.
And like, we talk a lot about like from the St. Louis perspective about why this team has hit the ground running. And it's because a year and a half before they started playing MLS, they hired John Hackworth to come in and be like the coaching director to establish the play from top flight all the way down to the youth level. And that's helped because they've had players in, they know what they're being asked to do. They know like the intensity that's being asked from in practice and in games, and like everyone's been on the same page from day one, which is important.
Right. Cool.
Well, I want to thank you, Hayden, again for coming on, talking with me, a little RSL, a little Utah Royals thrown in there.
Oh, of course, man.
If anyone wants to hear the RSL perspective, you can follow Royal Riot, go listen to the pod. Hayden, do you have anything else to plug before we sign off here?
No, man, you hit it off. I mean, for you St. Louis fans, we'll be having a healthy St. Louis discussion. Our pod comes out on Friday morning. So, I mean, your man here will be on it. And then Justin, of course, we'll get your perspective. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. And then we've also got Royal Ramble. What? The Ramble podcast. The Soccer Capital podcast.
Oh, yes, got the River City Ramble, of course.
River City Ramble. I was blanking on that first part.
I gotcha.
We've actually been communicating back and forth this week, and we have some fun things that they've been talking to us about. We don't actually have anybody from them coming on, but it'll be really fun, and we're really excited. And honestly, I'm stoked for St. Louis. I was prepping myself to come in and like piss off some St. Louis fans because I did that to Austin last year. I called them overrated and stuff. And I was prepping to do that again this week. And I was like, St. Louis fans are passionate. They'll come after me. That'll be fun.
Yeah. And honestly,
and then
I think too, we know, and we have a healthy podcast relationship with everyone. And we know, we came into the league thinking, all right, as long as we don't embarrass ourselves, we'll be good.
Right.
That was our expectation. So you come in this hot and everyone's just playing with house money now, and
no, y'all are killing it, and it totally changes my perspective. And then I've talked to I think 3 or 4 different St. Louis people this week just leading up to this, which I've never done with any other team. I've talked to maybe one a week, but I've had so many St. Louis people just honestly reach out, and the passion that y'all have for your team is amazing, and the passion from the fan base, I have no idea what the hell is in St. Louis. And
we love our soccer, man.
All I know is that the passion in that city is amazing, and I want to make it out to a game out there. And I don't know what I would do for the rest of the time I'm in there, but I know that I would have a fun time when I'm at the game. So I'm excited for y'all. It seems like a good time.
Yeah, we'll happily host you, Hayden, if you decide to come down. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much, and we'll have fun watching the game this weekend. Not gonna cry. Not gonna cry. Not gonna cry.